this evening. I hope it will be useful to you. I'm just going to start by introducing myself and what I do. And I have, obviously I've given you a sheet there, quite extensive sheet. It's got 6 pages, although 2 of them are just printouts from a book, just to give you an example. And I'm going to talk through and give you some more details on the information that's on there, but I don't want to spend the entire evening talking at you. Please feel free to ask me anything within reason that you like, and I will do my best to answer. So first up, my name's Debbie McGowan. As I mentioned, I am actually a qualified teacher, and I teach in a high school. I also teach for the Open University. And if any of you have had any experience working in education, you'll know it's a pretty tough job. It tends to take over your life. So I spent about 5 or 6 years saying, oh, we've only had time to write, I would, ... And eventually there came a point where I had to just make that decision, that I had to find the time to write. And partly, of course, that becomes a need to find an income as well to support writing, because publishing books and selling books has changed massively in the last 10 to 15 years. And this is something that's very important. We're in a physical bookshop that is filled with physical books, but this perhaps is something that is, if not, it's certainly not on its way out, but it's competing with the digital world, and that's something that all of us who are involved in writing and publishing books now have to bear in mind. So what happened basically was, there I was happily writing away and insulting e-book readers and saying, oh, they'll never take over from these fabulous things here. And you know, my sister will pick up a book, she'll flick a new book and say, it's the smell, it's that feel, there's something really special about it. And I thought, yes, she's absolutely right. And I got my first Kindle and thought, well, yeah, it's all right. It'll never be a book. This never leaves me. I take this everywhere. There's absolutely no reason for me to have my Kindle with me tonight, really. None whatsoever. But it has become a part of my life. And this is something that has massively changed. I have probably got on here as many books as are in this shop. And that's quite significant. But the initial step for me that got me into publishing was that I started downloading people's books for free, which was fabulous, because I had all of these books and I wasn't having to pay any money, except that they were not awful, they were wonderful stories, but they were badly punctuated, they were badly formatted, and I thought, this is such a shame, because these authors are showcasing their work and they're letting themselves down. And I thought, I'm a geek, I know how to help them with this, and that was how I started Beaten Track Publishing. I thought, well, I can format books, I can code web pages, and essentially creating ebooks is that same process as making a website. So why not offer that service to authors? And so that's what I did. What then happened was the first author that came on board with Beaten Track Publishing, a guy called Fred Hartman, who's a friend of my husband's. My husband is Nigel, just on the camera at the back there. He's the QPR supporter. As is Fred. And Fred had written this book called A Game of Two Halves, and it's actually in 2 halves. The first half of it is very autobiographical. It's about him and one of his friends who used to always go to the football together. And if you know anything about football, Queen's Park Rangers are a really dodgy side. They're currently in the 3rd Division Championship, and they had been in the Championship for a very long time, 16 years?
Something like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And basically Fred and his friend had been waiting for these 16 years for them to be promoted to the Premiership. The year that they did, Fred's friend died. And so this book really is about, it's not just about football, in fact the tagline of it is Friends, Family, Football. But Fred, you see, he's one of those very gregarious people who's energetic and sometimes energetic and really go-getter. So I'm saying to him, yeah, I can make you an e-book. He's going, well, what about paperbacks? We could have hardcover, we could do this, and we could do that. And somehow I ended up making paperbacks and hardcovers. And that was then the start of properly doing Beaten Track Publishing, so that you might have noticed as you came in. If you didn't, you'll have the opportunity to see there's a table at the back there with our paperbacks on them. On there, sorry. And so that was where really I went from my initial idea of working with authors to help them to polish their product to take their ebook and turn it into something that looked good, because it was a real shame that these stories were letting themselves down. And then Mr. Hartman came along and sort of pushed me towards doing the paperback as well. That was 2011, and now we're in 2014, and I'm at the point where I'm probably not going to be working in high school for much longer and can give much more time to the publishing side of things. But at the end of the day, I'm not a large publishing company. It's me. I have a few people who work with me as proofreaders and editors, but it's all freelance, it's all very small scale. And so the dent that we make in the market as a small publishing house is very small. But it does mean it gives me the freedom to work with lots of different people with wonderful work, and they might not ever get their books out there otherwise. So it's quite a positive thing for me, and it's something that is obviously very helpful to other people. So that's me rambling on forevermore about what I do. What you've got here is a much more general. There is information on the back of it about Beaten Track, and I'm not going to do the hard sell because there's no point. You've got the information here. You can find my website and you can ask me questions. There's no point in me trying to sell you a product. What I want to do is to give you some insights into what I've discovered about independently publishing. And over the past couple of years, what I've done is I've been to conferences, I've spoken to other authors who are working independently and having various levels of success. One of the best-selling authors in the world is an independent author, an American author whose name I can't remember, but she started off on Goodreads. Have you heard of Goodreads? Yeah, some people have, some people haven't. It's essentially it's an online social network for authors and readers, and when you create an account on there, you can update to say what book you're reading now, what books you've read in the past. If you're an author, you set up an author profile page, and people can leave reviews on there. So it's something, if you are writing yourself, it's well worth having an account there, and engaging with other authors and readers through that medium. But this, Bella, her name is, but I can't remember her second name, it might come to me eventually. She started off as a reader, as an author on Goodreads, interacting with readers. And she was at the point where, when she was given the opportunity to come out of her traditional publishing contract, she actually wanted to do that and to stay independent. So there is quite a lot of success to be had for independent authors working outside of what we've traditionally seen as the way to go about publishing. And so I've started off on here by saying, you know, the biggest challenge really in the 21st century that we've got as authors is still the same challenge as it always was. It's about getting our books out there and making sure that people know they're out there. And that hasn't got any easier. One of the things to bear in mind about this is that working with a traditional publisher might give you a little bit of a foot up, but a lot of the legwork will still be down to you. You will still be going into bookshops and doing signings. You would still be contacting the local paper, going into radio stations, doing interviews. Though that side of it really has never changed. And whether you're publishing independently or traditionally, that's still going to be the case. Books don't sell themselves, and there's only so far a publishing company will go for you. So that initial thing is really, and it's a bit of a, I suppose, an oxymoron, that because authors are so introvert generally, and yet they are the only ones who can actually sell their work. So you're having to go out there and say, buy my books, and actually that might be not you as a person at all. So it's quite a difficult one to get a balance with, but it's something you can do. Particularly, you've got now lots of tools online that allow you to do that. So on here I've mentioned, you know, about the real world stuff that I've just said, the book signings, going into bookshops. The virtual world is about social interaction through networks, Facebook, Twitter, Goodreads, LinkedIn. The list is endless, really. Advertising is something that is also worth considering if you are writing just for the sheer fun of it and you're actually loaded. Then you might want to pay out and get adverts. It will cost you about £800 to put one in the Guardian Review magazine, minimum. That's the lowest priced advert. Now, you know, that's something, it doesn't guarantee that anybody's going to buy your books, but it's another option for letting people know that you're writing. Another aspect of this is finding your niche. If you write something in a very specific genre, mechanic fantasy novels, you know, there's only going to be a certain number of people who are going to read your books, and it's about targeting that market as well. So a significant part of what you do as an author is finding out who it is who's going to read what you write. Also, something that happens, which you will all have seen, in fact, you only have to look around the shop to see it in action. So the Divergent novels, what's the other one?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, 50 Shades of Grey, Harry Potter. These books happen to hit the market at a particular point in time, and they sell, and they become bestsellers because of that. You don't need to tell me whether you've read 50 Shades of Grey, but it's not a good book. It's very poorly written. It just happened to be one of those books that hit the market at the right time and sold as well as it did. So, you know, this is something that to bear in mind, that even if you don't have market success, it doesn't mean you're a poor author, it just means that your product isn't the next big thing. But let's be honest, E.L. James wasn't making the best thing in sliced bread. It is not a good book. I mean, if you haven't read it and you're really curious, go and have a look. I've only read one page of it, and I'm very more than that. The other thing I'm going to mention here, and it's really important because there are sharks out there, if you've not come across them before, the vanity publishing companies online are rip-off merchants, in all honesty. That's why I've included these pages here, just to show you the work of one of the authors that we've worked with. Yes, it's actually that book that Nigel's holding up there, Coffee's Journey. The guy who wrote that is a
QPR supporter, strangely.
Another QPR.
We all support QPR in Formby. It's the bigger.
So yeah, basically Eddie Allen, the author of that book, was illiterate until he was in his late 40s, and he'd written this book that's autobiographical, and because, you know, he was late learning to read and write, his use of English language is not great, his use of punctuation is not great, so I'm guessing that the company that worked with him did do some work, because it isn't horrendous, as you'll see if you look at it. It's actually the one with the very small chapter 2 heading on it. There are a couple of errors in there. Very first line, my favourite, pastime. You know, they haven't worked their socks off. He paid nearly £3,000 to have this published.
Oh my God.
Yes, indeed. And then reviews showed up on Amazon. He didn't see any money. They told him he hadn't sold any books. Now, for there to be reviews on Amazon from people he didn't know, somebody's bought them. Somewhere along the line, somebody has paid that company in order to buy that book. Now, the thing about it is that we then had to fight with them to get them to withdraw their book because it was on Amazon and wherever else. They did eventually do that, and we created this book. And I'm not saying it's error-free, because it was quite a task, you know, because of how good his English is. But I ended up doing this for free, in part because I thought, you know, this man's lost enough and it's so unfair. I'll never be rich, but you know what, I've got a clear conscience. So the thing, you know, the thing with this is that I cannot say it strongly enough. Just watch your step with this, because there are people out there who are unscrupulous enough to say, "Oh, you're an author, we'll get you published," and actually you don't necessarily need them. Well, you absolutely don't need them. So I'll come back to that in a little while. What I've also done is given you a little table to compare traditional and independent routes. So what I mean by traditional is that you go to an agent perhaps, and you ask that agent to represent you and a particular piece of work that you have created. Dear agent, I have written this novel, it is whatever it is, and then they go out, first of all they have to decide whether they can sell your novel. They then take your novel to publishers who they think would be interested in it, and if those publishers then are prepared to offer a contract, the agent will negotiate on your behalf. They will obviously take a commission from that, and that's all well and good. You know, potentially you could do very well. J.K. Rowling did splendid. but we're not all J.K. Rowling, and at the end of the day, the traditional publishers are laying out an incredible amount of money. So what they've got in their favour, they're big. So we've all heard of the likes of Penguin. They will usually pay authors advances. They quite often will claim those advances back if you don't manage to sell enough copies, but they do offer those advances to begin with. They support your marketing, so if you are going on a schools tour, they may well do all of the legwork of getting in touch with the local radio stations, putting stuff in the papers and so on, to make it clear that that's what you're doing. So, you know, a lot of that PR work, they're really going to be very supportive of that. And potentially, you've got greater income that you can generate from it. Even though the traditional publishers will take quite a significant percentage, and your agents would also take a percentage as well, because you are selling such massive volumes of books, you may well make money. There's certainly the opportunity to make the money. The problems with it, primarily for me, and I was published by a small publisher, it's the losing control. So my book went out and I looked at the copy and said there's mistakes in it. The publisher said don't look at it. And you know, that then becomes, well, I've got no control over where the publisher decides they want to sell that book. So if they want to bring it into Tony's shop, then great, but they might decide that this isn't a good place for this book to go. And you have no control over that as an author. It's also a very slow process. We had, a couple of years ago, wasn't it, Elle's book, Christmas 2012, an American author, Elle Zober, and said to me...
I happen to have one here.
Yeah, she contacted me in August and said, I'd like to get this book out for Christmas. Now, traditional publishers couldn't do that from August to Christmas. There's just no way they could turn it around that quickly. But I said, yeah, that's great. So we set publishing deadlines. So she was going to get her first draft into me by the end of September, which then gave me October to edit it, get it back to her. She could go through my edits, and by the end of November, we'd have the finished product in for print, ready for Christmas. November the 27th, I thought, this is definitely not going to happen. November the 28th. Hi, Deb. What would be the chances of getting this book out for Christmas? So my initial reaction was obviously to go, oh yeah, absolutely, and not to laugh hysterically at all at the prospect of getting a book out in less than a month. For some bizarre reason, I said, yes, we can do that. So between Elle and I, she wrote, I edited as she wrote, and we got that book out by December the 10th. Now, again, I won't guarantee it's perfect, because clearly it was such a rush job that there will be mistakes that slip through the net, because we didn't have time to go through the normal edit, re-edit, proofread over and over again. But it's doable. That's something that traditional publishers just absolutely couldn't manage at all. And in part it's because of the fact that they are going to run a long run of books. So they're going to publish thousands, they're going to print thousands of your book. And so that needs everything setting up in advance. What the smaller publishers do, what I do, is use the print-on-demand services, and that means that we can be much quicker. The other thing that traditional publishers do, and if you've been into a pound shop, you'll see this, that there are books in pound shops that a few months ago would have been in here or in Waterstone for £8, £9, £10, and now they're £1. Now, those are books that are not selling, and so it's the publisher trying to get any money back from it at all. It's a bit like a repossessed house, really, and that's where authors are then potentially losing their advances because their book isn't selling as well as the publisher would like. And I'm not bad-mouthing publishers here, as I've said on here. Where I've got it? Is it under the bit with the agent? Yeah. I went to a talk given by one of the agents, a very successful agent based in London, and he was saying, think of the numbers that a publisher has paid out so much that they need to sell 40,000 copies of your book in order to break even. And so if they're getting nowhere near that, or they think they're not going to get anywhere near that, they're not going to offer you a deal. And if you're not selling quickly enough, and that's 40,000 in a year, that basically they are going to drop you. So it is it can be a very short-lived and temporary relationship that you have with a publisher. And finally, it's driven by the market. So if you are writing Formby geographical squirrel adventures, you know, this is very specific. And certainly in Burscough, Tesco will sell books about Burscough and Ormskirk, and I'm guessing the same would be true here. But they are a very specific, very small market, and a major publisher can't afford to take loads of books on because there's just not enough return on them. On the other side, you've got the independent publishing route, and this is where you can either do it entirely by yourself, completely DIY, or you can work with someone like, say, Beaten Track, and there's a few other companies similar to Beaten Track that are offering what I'd call a hybrid service. Or you can buy proofreaders to work with you, but ultimately you keep control of your book. It's quicker. It's as quick as it takes to do the editing process and the printing process. The book is available for as long as you're prepared to leave it out there. And with, you know, the likes of, say, the Kindle store, once it's on there, it's there until you tell them to take it off. Anyone can do it. So you could go away from here, even with something like this handout in Word document form, and upload it to the Kindle store, and it will be available tomorrow morning. And it's as easy as that. And you remain completely in control. You decide on your prices, you decide where you want to sell it. The cons of that is you're completely in control. And anyone can do it, because there is no guarantee of the quality of that work, and I've read some appalling books. Aside from E.L. James, who got a publishing contract, you know, I have great respect for her. She's done an amazing job, and she's actually a very humble person. I've read interviews with her, and she's fabulous. But at the end of the day, she didn't have a great product, but she did get a publishing contract for that, and that was because of the market rather than the quality of the product. She has then got all of that spit and polish that the publishers can give, but you take away that and you've got an author who isn't so good at what they do, doesn't know how to use a full stop or a colon, who just thinks, oh, I'll upload this book to Amazon. And that's in there with potentially your book that is amazing and properly punctuated and properly spelled. You've gone through all that rigmarole of paying an editor and so on and so forth, for your book to be up alongside someone who just stuck it out there. So there is a potential problem with that. But as I say, you know, you are in control, and that's a negative too, because it means that you have to be always keeping track of what's going on and looking at how things are changing, keep an eye on pricing and stuff like that. So you know, there are cons to this as well. You also get no advances. So if you are going to be paying editors and the like, that's all coming out of your pocket up front. So in essence, the costs are front-loaded if you are publishing yourself independently. And the other point that's very difficult, we've found even as a hybrid publisher, is getting physical books into shops is nigh on impossible. And you know, you get a relationship with someone like Tony and it's fab because you can get the books in here. But we've got authors in the US, and Elle Zober I mentioned already, she was very lucky. She went into her local Barnes & Noble, said, I want to do a book signing. She'd been on the news about, because basically what happened was her husband left her for a 23-year-old yoga instructor. So she sold the house and put a sign on the front lawn that said, husband left us for a 23-year-old yoga instructor. Something about scorned bitter owner, I can't remember. But anyway, because she'd had coverage on TV, Barnes & Noble, brilliant, bring it on. So they stocked her book, they let her do a signing. They were very, very supportive. In contrast to that, we have a gay author in Philadelphia who has a book at the moment, just won an Nippy Award, and is up for a Lammy Award. And the local gay bookshop refused to buy from the distributor because the distributor were creaming off all of the commission. So I said to them, well, we'll send it to you directly. Oh no, we can't be doing that, it's too much hassle. And that, they weren't alone in doing that. Another bookshop in New York had the same problem for another.
It's interesting to note that bookshop is now shut down. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a problem, and I'm not saying necessarily that it's the independent bookstores that are at fault. Their hands are tied as well because of the fact that the distributors are taking their cut along the way. So what we found that works best is where our authors have got in touch with local bookshops and done it for themselves, like Elle did, and Fred, QPR Fred, he got jammy actually, didn't he, because the sports books buyer at Foyles in London is a QPR supporter. So he said, oh yeah, we'll get some of his books in. And QPR sell it in their club shop as well. So that's possible, but it's something I have to say later on in this sheet. Authors have got to do a lot of the work themselves now. It's the only way you're going to sell books. So, assuming at this point I've completely put you off the idea of independent publishing, if you wanted to go down the traditional route, your first step is finding an agent. And I'm just going to, this is nothing to do with me, this is from this agent in London. He's called Piers Blofeld, and I saw him at the London Author Fair a few months ago. He did a really, really good talk. He was absolutely down to earth, very nice guy. And unlike some of the other people that were there that day, was quite positive about independent publishing, but he was still maybe a little bit self-preserving, understandably. But some things he mentioned that were really important. First up, if you are one of those people like me who kind of sit between different genres, so the stuff I write is a bit contemporary fiction, it's a bit literary fiction, it has elements of romance, it has elements of thriller. Where on earth are you going to put my book in a bookshop? What shelf does it go on? So one of the first things he said is, think about if you're out there to sell books and you want to sell lots of books, go into a bookshop and have a think about where in this shop is your book going to sit on the shelves. Go into Waterstones and do the same thing, and you need to have a very clear idea of the genre that you write within. Once you've done that, you can go to an agent and say, my books, I am an author and I write in this genre. And the thing is then, if you want to write in a different genre, really, you think about pen names so that it doesn't confuse things, and that it's very clear that when they look, they say, well, Fred Smith, he writes contemporary thrillers, or whatever it might be. He also said, a lot of authors do this thing because of the fact that there's been so many series of books. So obviously Tolkien was there first with Lord of the Rings, but Rowling did the same thing. The other book would go Insurgent, Divergent. This is the new thing, that people expect a series of books. So what authors tend to do is they save the good stuff for the second book. No good. It needs to be in that first book. That's what's going to sell it. And even when you get a publishing deal, you're getting it for that one book. So it might be that the publisher thinks, well, great, it's a trilogy, but it's that first book and how well that sells to determine whether they take the second or the third. What I've mentioned already about needing to sell huge numbers of copies, that really is the thing. If you are in the business of sending those letters out to publishers and you've already had rejection letters, really don't take it to heart, because it might not be that your book is rubbish. It's that your book isn't going to sell enough copies for a huge company that are in it to make a profit. So, please don't feel dejected if you've been in that situation, because it's not a nice feeling. It's a wonderful feeling when they say, oh, we might be interested. But at the same time, they are talking about, we might be interested in selling this book if it will sell X thousand copies. And if you've hit the market at the wrong time, or the right book, wrong time, that really is the reasoning why. It's not that you're rubbish. Having said that, it might be that you're rubbish, in which case you need to get some second opinions. Find beta readers, so people who know the genre of book that you write and who you can trust to give you an honest opinion. Write a letter to an agent that sells your book. So, if you've got into this already, you'll see there are standard letters that they say, write this letter. He says, don't do that. You need to make a mark as you being unique. I am me, this is my book, I am amazing, and this is why you should take me on. And so he says, forget all of that template stuff. This is about selling you as an author and your book. So do it your way. That might not work for all agents, I'm just saying what he said. The other thing that a lot of authors measure their success by now is whether they get an option for a film deal. Getting an option for a film deal means absolutely nothing, because it's only an option. They might then go, nah, we're not going to make it really. And it would be wonderful. Now, I quite often sit there thinking how amazing it would be to have my books in film form. It could happen. It probably won't. It would be nice, but it's a bit of a dream. But it, you know, it's one of those things. Just bear in mind. Don't if a publisher's saying, "Oh yeah, we'll option your film," it doesn't really mean very much.
Basically, the contract will tie up your work as many ways as they possibly can. So that's basically all they're doing with that, isn't it?
Yeah. And the author I mentioned before in Philadelphia, we the first thing we worked with him on, he had a book that was published in ebook form only, with, well, 2 books actually, with 2 different publishers in ebook form. Yes, Damaged Angels is one of them. What had happened was in the publishing contracts he had, they had options for doing the paperbacks. And Boldstrokes, who published the ebook of Damaged Angels, agreed to give us the rights to publish the paperback version. What are they called? Carina,
Yeah.
which is part of Harlequin, Mills and Boon, all of that huge conglomerate, have got the option for the paperback on his other book, and absolutely refused to let us have that. Which of course now, because the book that we published for him in full form is the one that's the shortlisted for Lambert, they're quite happy to make paperbacks of his first book now. So yeah, so quite interesting political game going on there. But yes, as Nigel said, a publisher will tie you up, and they will try and cover all their options, so that even if they only offer you, we will put your book out as an ebook. Within the contract, it may well be that it says, but we might decide to do the paperback. We might decide to look at action movies and so on. And you need to be aware of that, because that can limit how much control you've got over your book. It goes back to that you have no control. Whereas an independent author can do what the hell they like. And of course, then it's the money to make a movie, isn't it? Okay, is there anything you wanted to ask me at this point before I go any further?
Well, I'm at a disadvantage here because I wrote my autobiography 30 years ago,
Right.
and I typed it all out. I don't have access to a computer, so is that an actual drawback for me?
It depends on the route that you take. In terms of if you were going to an agent to seek representation, they would expect an electronic submission. So you get into the situation then if you would be paying someone to type up the hard copy and put it back into digital forms, and then you would have that to send to an agent. As far as if you're working with someone like...
So an agent wouldn't accept?
It's unlikely.
A typescript?
It tends to be all electronic now. But I mean, the thing to do would be to speak to the agent themselves in your initial... some agents will actually say on their websites or wherever you find their information that they want initially just a letter of application in which you would then say, I only have the paper form of this, and they would tell you if they were interested in it, what they expected you to do about it. But it's likely they would want you to put it into a digital system.
So really I am there at a total disadvantage, aren't I?
Yeah.
It's not actually that difficult to convert paper to
Well, no,
digital
the
now.
other side of that, as I was going to say, you know, if you go through someone, I mean, say for instance, if I decided I wanted to take it on, that I would look at whether I could actually do that as part of what I do for you to turn it into the digital form I'd need to publish it. But everything now is done through digital submission, unfortunately. But as I say, it'd be something that you'd be best talking to when you make that initial application to an agent. If they come back to you and say, we'd be interested, you would talk to them directly about what they require, and it might be that they say, well, we can do this for you. If they wanted enough, then they would, wouldn't they?
Can I just say that, sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh,
Alan. We would just say to Alan that I have noticed in the current, this year's edition of Writers and Authors Yearbook, that there are still 1 or 2 professional publishers who are specifically asking for hard copy. And that's in the current edition of the Writers and Authors Yearbook. I noticed it because it's so unusual, but there are still a couple who prefer hard copy.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, what's your view about signing copyright over? My book isn't a novel, it's sport. I had a meeting with the publisher who sent me a contract, and part of that was signing a copyright to them. There was other things. I looked up a website, advice to authors, and picked up on various things.
Yeah.
I refused to sign the contract. He made some good suggestions about improvement, but I think our relationships collapse now. But what is your view on signing over?
I'm absolutely against authors signing their copyright over.
Yeah.
I just think when you work as hard as you do to produce what you have done, how rude of someone else to usurp your work in order to make money. Because when you look at what a publisher makes, you know, that whole numbers game, they're talking about making a profit out of your work. You did the work originally. And I just think, I think there's something very immoral about it, and it's partly why I got into this. And like I say, you know, I'll never be rich. I would never expect that. What I do is offer non-exclusive contract, so the copyright always remains with the author. We talk about whether we want to go with just an ebook or just a paperback or both. We've even looked at the possibility of audiobooks. It's something that we're looking into. But in all cases, an author could come back to me and say, "Will you publish my book for me?" But now I'm going, and take their work elsewhere. And I have written into the contract, you know, that if that happens, it may well be there are costs involved in withdrawing distribution and the like.
But it's never happened.
It's never happened, and at the end of the day, it's your work. And I think there's something really wrong. I think because I'm an author myself, that's part of it. But the idea of losing something that is mine, and it becomes so. I mean, I don't know, because it may well be different when you're not writing fiction. But I write a series that I've been writing since 2007, and I live with those characters. So the idea of giving those characters to somebody else is really quite distressing, to be honest. That's like sending my dogs off to live with someone else. So which are border collies, just in case. Yes, bless them, they're lovely. So I'm against it.
Okay, thank
completely.
you.
And in the same sense that they do with the music industry, you know, that you look at artists who, for instance, Morten Harket from a-ha is currently on a solo tour. He was due to perform in Turkey, and the tour organiser found out that he can't do a-ha songs because he doesn't own the rights to them. Whoever their record label was owns the rights to the a-ha songs, so they cancelled his tour. You know, and that was just because he's not allowed to sing his own songs that he co-wrote. So it's a very unfair situation. But that's my opinion.
Okay, right.
Anything else you wanted to ask at this point?
What about the problems of plagiarism and stuff like that? If you publish something, copyright as well, you know, in terms of how can you preserve or safeguard your copyright?
It becomes increasingly difficult with digital realm, and in fact, one of the authors we've worked with has been having a long-term battle with a Russian ebook company, ebook site, that basically nipped all over the world from somewhere else, and they're selling it on their website. And she's asked them to take it off, and they say they will, and then it's just somewhere archived within, and people can still access it. And there's nothing you can do about it. And you know, it's the same with downloading MP3s and even things like the way Metallica went about protecting all of their music and took it all offline. There will still be videos. Well, there's one I use for teaching about mental health that's about, it's got video of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Welcome Home Sanatorium by Metallica over the top. And you can just rip the music off YouTube, you know. So, and the same thing is going to always be true, that even if you protect your book, if it's available in electronic form online, someone can copy and paste, even out of PDF, which should be a fixed form that can't be edited. You can still copy and paste and draw it out of there. What it comes back to is protecting yourself as much as you can. So you make sure that you have the initial copies that give that date stamp of when you wrote that book, when you created that, and then you just have to sort of keep an eagle eye on it. There's ways of tracking on using Google tools to see when your name is mentioned online. You could use digital rights management, so the DRM option, so that you're encrypting it, but most authors choose not to do that. But yeah, you can't pin it down really. Just do the best you can to protect yourself. And make sure everything has got that copyright, your name and the date on it whenever you put it out there as well. Because that definitely claims that as yours. Anything else?
I was going to say we can let people have a quick drink and then do some questions, and people might want to talk to you directly about thingies.
Yeah, I mean that suits me because there's the information that's actually on here. The rest of it is about the actual process. So if I just very briefly say about this bit here, because this is my bugbear and it's where I started from tonight to say why I went into doing this. Was I was reading fabulous books by brilliant authors that were let down by just needing a little bit of a polish. I'm actually reading one at the moment by an author who is amazing, but I've never seen anybody use the word "then" so much in my life. And it'll be things like a sentence and they'll say, "and then he kissed me. Then she took the cups to the kitchen." And you think, well, you don't need that "then" in there, but because he is not distanced enough from it to see it for himself, and you can be the best self-editor in the world and be really good at spotting mistakes. I guarantee you will not see all the mistakes in your work. My sister is one of my proofreaders, and she just rings up and laughs at me because I miss out. Well, our brains are programmed to do it. So you don't. If you miss out two or the, your brain just fills in the gap for you. That's fine. It's how we know that. I can see that the people behind the people aren't missing bits because I can't see them. I know that the rest of you is there because my brain will have it in. Well, that's what we do with literature. What's underneath it, I can figure it out. So you always need that there, the importance of having an editor, proofreaders and cover designers. You cannot do this completely on your own. However you go about that, it's up to you. Don't use vanity publishers is my only real, the do and don't of tonight. Do get an editor. Do get a proofreader. Don't pay £2,500 to a vanity publisher who will say that they're going to do it for you and then not. And when you're going for an editor, go and look at their other work first, because there's a lot of people out there saying, "Oh yeah, I know I've read the book," and they couldn't punctuate Janet and John. So just use a bit of common sense, really. I think is what I'm saying.
We didn't anticipate this many people coming, so A, thank you. B, if you can try and find a few minutes every so often to have a look at Formby Books has got a website, formbybooks.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. We do our level best to keep telling people what we're trying to do with poetry, publishing, book clubs. We do all manner of things. We do need you all to keep in touch though. There's only sort of me and Andre helps a bit and a couple of Saturday kids, so please keep in touch and we'll keep telling you what we're doing. The idea tonight was to let people have a bit of time with Debbie to sort of talk, here's what I've written, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to have time to fit all of that in. So I think what we'll end up doing, I think Nigel was saying, we'll get some pen and paper here. Everyone can write down their name and a contact email or phone number. Nigel will get in touch with everyone. Things can be emailed over, obviously. And in a few weeks' time, in June, Debbie's going to come back on a Sunday afternoon and just spend the afternoon here. Brilliant. And then in theory people can sort of book a slot to come in at 2 or half 2 or 3 or whatever.
Like a surgery,
and, like a proper surgery, that was the word, yeah.
Parents' evening is better.
I think maybe get away with, because I know everyone who writes wants another person to look at it, an editor, a publisher, or even sometimes just another person who will read it. Like Debbie, I get asked by people, "Will you read this for me? What do you think of it?" Sometimes it's very hard to actually say the right thing at the right time. So I think doing this in stages might prove beneficial. But a big thank you to everyone for coming to this. You know, it's a bit warm in here, but I think we're just about surviving. So I think, you know, we'll get a pen and paper in a minute before people go in half an hour or so. But maybe we'll just try and do some questions and answers. You know, it's very hard to know what question you want to ask an editor or a publisher, but every book is different. You know, fiction seems to always be the big thing. I personally wonder about things like novellas. I mean, are novellas coming in as a...
They are in ebook form,
Yeah.
definitely. They're really
Yeah.
common. In fact, a few people have mentioned to this to individually that readers of ebooks are looking for shorter stuff now, so that if you are publishing, a lot of authors are going for publishing in volumes, so they might have a 90,000 word novel and break it into 3 parts. Or, for instance, you've got a collection of short stories that you might put out in 1 volume as a paperback, but you would put it out in a number of parts as ebooks, because people do want to just drop in, and we live in a fast food culture, and that fast food culture is impacting on all aspects of our lives. So people are used to consuming in very small quantities and very quickly. So if they can pick up their Kindle on their coffee break at work and just read a short story, that suits them, or just a chapter. So it means we're having to change the way we write. So if you are one of those people who writes long winding chapters like what I do, I've had to start cutting them in half, looking for those breaks in them to bring it down to a size that is sensible. The other thing about it actually, and I don't know whether it will show up on here just to show you, I don't know how well you can see at the back, the breaks in between the lines on that page. That it's amazing how much difference. We'll just pick a book at random and see if it works. This one's not too bad actually for paragraph breaks.
I think I know what you
Typical,
mean.
isn't it? Sod's law.
Yeah.
More of a
You
journalistic
mean it can just look
style.
like a
God
dense block of
damn
text?
it, yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I meant. So,
Yeah.
so the other thing with ebooks is trying to remember that a paragraph, you know, forget it. It works, I swear it works. Right, there we go.
It's
So
an
you
older
look
book
at
as
something
well,
like,
yeah.
yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, that's actually quite a small font in that book. But that's a paragraph there. Now that paragraph would fill a page on the Kindle just at the ordinary sized font. If you've got people who are reading it at large print size, that paragraph could last 2 or 3 pages, and you need to be bearing that in mind in the way that you write. And it's quite disconcerting. I'll just leave it at that. It's a very new way of writing. It's a very modern way of writing.
It's a journalistic way. I have a degree in journalism. I write that way.
Yeah, but I mean that's what sells. That's what readers are looking for. The people who do read, there's not many people who do read anymore. So that's, you know, it's things like that. It's shorter chapters, shorter books, shorter paragraphs. None of those one-word sentences there.
Mr. Patterson, he developed that style, didn't he? I mean, there's a couple of people here who have written sort of non-fiction, I think. I know Gordon's working on a non-fiction, and there was a chap who's done like a music. Is that you? Yeah, yeah. So, you know, publishers will be interested in different things. If it's purely fiction, eventually, no matter how committed you are to the cause of books and reading, you do burn out a little bit sometimes. So I think, you know, if there is variety out there, you know, it would be advised to not be worried about what you're writing. An editor and a publisher will always look at it with, you know, open eyes, really. Anyone got a question anyway? Let's Paul.
Yeah. I'd like to know one thing that I've never quite understood, and I wonder if perhaps you could explain a little bit for me. The profits a writer sees from traditional printed copies, royalties. Now, explain for me how royalties with the sale of an e-book when you can download it for 99 cents compared with royalties for the price of a book which might retail for £12. How does the writer make any sort of profit from these apparently very cheap downloads of e-books?
Right.
Is it like Woolworth's principle, pal them high and sell them cheap?
Yes, but you haven't got the overheads involved. Right, it took me 3 goes to pass maths, so if any of this doesn't work, play it back. Don't be going, I will certainly, I'll just talk a little louder. So, right, first of all, if you were to publish, let's go with Amazon because they're the big wigs here. So you're going to put out a book in Kindle form, electronic form on Amazon, and they have a number of different options. The lowest you can sell an ebook on Amazon is 99 cents. If you sell at 99 cents, you have to go with their low-level royalties, which is 30%. So you get 30% of every sale. That's your 30 cents on this occasion. If you sell within the boundary of $2.99 to, I think it's $6.99, you can go into their 70% royalty. So you get then on every sale, you're going to get 70% of that. So on a $3 book, that's $2.10. So I'm all right as long as I don't think about it. Do you know what's frightening? I teach A-levels with statistics in them. So I'm sorry if any of your children have come through my doors. No, I can do it as long as I don't think about it. So anyway, $2.10. Now the thing about that is that there was no initial payout. You didn't have to pay anything other than your time to put your book online. So that $2.10 is yours to take away. However, if you had a paperback and you sold that at, say, $5, a certain amount of that would have been paid out in print. So if you're doing it independently, let's say it's a 300-page book. Now, I can only give you, based on my print-on-demand service that I use, it would cost me £3.70 to print a 300-page book. Now, that means there's only £1.30 left before we even go any further. And that's already less than the $2.10, or around the same amount actually because of the conversion, because of the fact that there's the print costs involved within that. So, to be fair to publishers, a big part of it is the fact that they're printing and they're paying out for the distribution and the ISBN numbers and the like that doesn't come into it with ebooks. What you will find is that a lot of publishers are putting out ebooks at ludicrously high prices. Now they're not allowed, Amazon's policies will not allow them to price an ebook higher than the paperback. It has to be a certain percentage lower. I think it's something like 70% maximum of the cost price. But what they do is they sell the paperbacks through Amazon's partners. So you then get where the paperback is available for £4, but the Kindle edition is £6. And they're doing it sort of underhand. Really, everything you have with an ebook is profit. And so there is no reason to sell it. You need to look at, if I sell this as a paperback, I'm going to make £2. How much do I need to sell it for as an ebook in order to make that same amount? I think that's the way to do it.
So basically it's a question of volume sales.
It is, and the fact that there's no initial outlay for an ebook. Now, it depends, because if you're publishing independently and you're paying someone to format your books, that's something you've got to take into account with that as well. But there's none of the ongoing print costs. So it's essentially raw profit.
Okay, it makes more sense to me now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Reviews then. Do you have on your website, you've got all the books that you published. I mean, do you ask people to do reviews for you? Independently of you, the author, and you know, your proofreader. You know, do you have people who you can tap into to get reviews done like other authors, other than ones you're connected to?
I refuse to play the political game with it. There is a huge political game with reviewing. Goodreads that I mentioned before. There is an issue on there where there are people who will essentially sabotage the work of certain authors. So I've got people who, my book, The Harder They Fall, that came out last summer, look at that shameless plug there, there were people who had given it 5-star reviews before it had even been published. I'm thinking, it's sitting on my computer, I'm still editing it, and you said 5 stars, how is that even possible? And it's because there is this political game of upping some book ratings and lowering others, and that does spill over, unfortunately, into Amazon. What I would say is that anybody that reads your book, hassle them to review it for you. So once your book is out there, you know, just keep saying to people, if you read this, please, regardless of whether they want to give you 2 stars or 5 stars, those reviews really matter. And if it's a fair 2-star review, it doesn't affect future sales. You know, if someone says, well, this is not the book for me, and there were problems, even if it's problems with the editing that you then go on to fix, you can comment and say, I've now fixed those problems. That won't affect your future market. The issue is when you go through books, and loads of my books have got no reviews at all. So, I know people have read them because they've emailed me and said, I read this book and it was really good. And I think, get on the bloody site and write everything then. But it's that thing, even if, because Amazon make you have a certain word limit, I think you have to have written 250 characters and give it a title before it will post the review. That's too much effort for some readers. Because they can't just write, yeah, it was good. They've got to actually say it was good because it has a little bit more oomph to it. But if people are reading your books, get them, even if they're your mates, husbands, daughters, children, wives, whoever it might be, just get the dog, get them to write a review, because it does matter. But I don't pay people. There's a site called, can't remember. They charge publishers £500 membership in order to get professional reviews of their books. I don't even make £500 in the 6 months membership. I'm making a very small amount because I'm only taking profit share, so I don't make huge amounts of money. I do make more than £500, to be fair, but I push it back into stuff, so I don't see it. So yeah, so if people read your book, tell them to tell the world how amazing you are.
What do people find that type of thing from Harper Collins, you know, that you work your way up the system there?
I am really very sceptical of that because authors are getting sucked in the same way as they are with fantasy publishing, where they feel like, oh, I've been published by HarperCollins. Well, actually, no, you haven't. You've been published by the vanity arm of HarperCollins, and because it's not hugely well known at the moment, but that's what they're doing. I think for now, a lot of authors are probably going to sell a fair bit of copy by saying HarperCollins. You put on it a HarperCollins imprint or something, can't you, on your work? It will reach a point where people will know that the likes of Autonomy are actually vanity publishing.
Yeah, I didn't know that because I've got my book in there and it started to climb again. I started at 7,000 and then now I'm at 4,000 or something, which is quite a leap when you've done none. See, what I don't like about Autonomy is, like you said about 5 hours before you even read it, they have a tendency to use soft cookies. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. I don't agree with that. If a book is good, then it will.
That's it, isn't it? Because it becomes that game of how do you get the book up the ratings?
Yeah.
Because the same thing is true with Kindle. Now Amazon have got the publishing on Kindle. The reviews become, well, this book is popular, and look at it. Even the CreateSpace Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award, the second quarter-final, I think it is run on the basis of the reviews that you get. So it's a popularity contest. It's not about how good your book is, it's how many people you've gone into reviewing it. And that's then going to push you up that rating. Now, what you will find with Autonomy, it's brilliant if it works for you selling books, who cares? At the end of the day, that's what you're there for. What can happen is it will float for a while because people go, oh, it's HarperCollins, it seems to be good. And then it will reach a point where the market will become aware of what actually Autonomy is about, and then it will start to drop off again. So I think it depends on how you want to play the game, really. I think if you want to sell out and sell books, then do whatever you have to do it. And I think that's the bottom line, really, that a lot of authors will go, like E.L. James, you know, brilliant, bring it on, she came up with this piece of fan fiction, no swearing, piece of fan fiction that was published online that then she was able to sell and is now absolutely loaded. And I don't think she's under any illusion. She's a qualified teacher. I don't think she'll be teaching anywhere again, but, you know, I don't think she's under any illusion that it's good. But at the end of the day, she has actually produced a product that the market wanted, and she's made a load of money out of it. And that is, for a lot of authors, that's what they're after. There are a lot of authors out there who are writing books and selling books that are not the love of their life. They're not the thing I talked about before. Other people said to me here, that's how I feel about my work. You know, they don't feel that passionately about it, but they're in it to make a living. And I suppose it's the difference between serving burgers in McDonald's and serving gourmet beef steaks in fantastic bread that's taking hours to create, and you're going to sell one off. And you might only get one customer coming for that burger, but it'll be the best burger they ever have in their life.
Heston. Imagine you make them so big, they feed about 200 in one go.
Slicing around like a gaffer.
How long from submission to publication is what's your basic rough guidance?
Depends on how much work it takes. As I say, I've done one in 2 weeks, and that wasn't short. How many pages was that? About 300?
No idea. 299. Good guess.
See, mine's different.
And then you got John Honey, of course.
It depends on how much work is involved in what it is, and how much you argue with me. For instance, Larry Benjamin, the one who has gone for the awards, he's silent now. I'm hoping he's going to end up watching this because I'll get him back for it. Larry argued with me all the way through the editing process. He had tantrums in the margins. I don't know if you've ever used track changes on a Word document. It comes with little bubbles down the side. So I would say, you have used the same word 3 times in this paragraph. You need to think about different ways to say the same thing. Try and find a synonym for this. And he would write, "What? Exclamation mark, question mark, ... no!" in capital letters. I think, fine, leave it as it is, see if I care. So we had an interesting 2 or 3 weeks of this constant back and forth of me saying, right, how about this? And this one particular paragraph, he absolutely flat out refused to change, and in the end it was fine. But actually, that process now, he realises, was what polished his work. And it was a fantastic novel, a brilliant story, but there were some really dodgy bits in it. I mean, Rainbow Bubbles. It's a gay romance, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's very, very moving. But there's a part of it where he just goes on rainbow bubbles, and they were unnecessary, and it was ridiculously camp. And I'm reading this story, and I'm absolutely reading what's going on with these 2 characters, and all of a sudden there's these rainbow bubbles, and I think, why are these bubbles here? What have they got to do with actually what's going on in the story? I won. Bubbles were gone. So, you know, it's that process that will elongate how long it takes to get a book out there. And I'm not saying do as I say, and I'm not saying I know best, but it's those disagreements, creative disagreements, that can lengthen a process that could be quite quick if I say to you, well, I really like what you've done and this is fine. Or you say to me, I just want you to give it a quick buff as opposed to a proper full hot spoon army boot style. So yeah.
But you can do no. Fair
I can do it in a few days, or it can take 6 months.
Yeah, but if people are realistic about the time it takes, that takes away that ambition for it to be overnight.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes would-be writers have got this, I've written it, therefore it's finished syndrome, and that's not always the case.
Yeah. And I'll tell you the other thing with that actually is, don't believe for 1 minute that once you've written it, that it's done. Because, I wish I brought that image now. There's a pie chart that I've put up online, the process of writing a novel, and you're looking at 20–30% of that process being the initial writing of the novel itself. The rest of it is the drafting and redrafting and editing and rereading, and that's your work. That's not down to your editor to do that. So, but you're also kind of taking a piss bit if you give a piece of work to an editor and say, right, well, there it is, it's done. Because all you've done is you've written down the words, and if you haven't even read it through once, it's nowhere near done. So, you know, look to be editing and re-editing. I've got a book due out on June the 1st, second shameless plug, that I'm still editing now because I've got it on here and I keep reading it and I keep finding things I want to change, and you'll never be finished once you get into that drafting and redrafting process. It's never going to be perfect, but you can make it as perfect as it can possibly be. And you just use that time as much as you can. So if you said to me, I'm going to send you my book on this day, then right up until midnight the day before, you want to be going through that book, making changes, improving over and over again. And then it might be worth something. You know, give yourself that.
How many books a year do you think you can sort of effectively publish or help publish, whichever side of it? There's equal and opposite there.
Yeah, it's difficult to say, to be honest, because obviously things are going to change for me from September.
Yeah, well that's what. Yeah, well that's the good
time,
news,
so
isn't it?
yeah,
That's good.
I'd say I could probably do 4 of them. If we were talking of novel length.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if people are doing poetry, short stories, or novellas, they're basically within reason easier to polish and finish, aren't they? Because there is actually less words involved, isn't there?
There's less words, but it's more, the presentation's more important.
Well, yes, yeah.
So, which book
Well,
is
I
it?
like. There's one of yours that's got
Is-
lovely waxy sort of the purpley. I'm colour black, purpley blue one.
Well, a couple of them are waxy.
Yeah, that's lovely.
No, that's
No, that's
lovely. It's the matte. What, that one?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
there's
matte-
the matte and the gloss.
Yeah, no,
Sorry?
that's a full novel. No, the Bolger
Yeah.
one's it's a shorter. I mean, you know,
yeah.
that's a lovely presentation.
Yeah.
You know, it's yes, that's the one. I like that one.
Yeah. That's a really nice little book as well, actually, and that's a good length, because that's novella length, so that's a good length for ebooks.
Yeah.
And those sort of things is Arthur's book there.
I've only got one left actually. It was on the table.
It was on the table. I saw it. Oh, you've got it. Yeah.
Can you just open to one of the poems, because it might be worth people seeing, because it's the little fiddly things like putting like getting the layout right with images and the poems and stuff. But I
yeah.
mean, that's very different. Just pass it around to people.
Oh
to
yeah.
look.
Just pass it around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
In many respects, it's actually easier to format a novel. Like, for instance, with Brian's children's books.
Oh yeah, they took you a long
They
time,
take
didn't
me
they?
hours and hours, because I have to, his drawings are all done by hand, but I have to scan them into the computer, then go over them, then colour them in. And you know, you're looking at some of those images.
And they look very, very simple in the first instance, don't they?
But it'll take me 5 or 6 hours sometimes to actually put those images together, because I'm having to draw over every single line that he's put in. And he, you know, bless him, he does. He's now working on pretty good quality paper, best quality paper he can use. He's using Sharpies to do it, but it will still, when you get it up to the sort of quality that we need to go to print, it will still blot. And so I have to do it in Photoshop. But I mean, it's quite nice if I've been working on a heavy novel. It's quite nice to have a few hours just to sit and do grown-up colouring in, really.
But if anyone needs an illustrator, our Holly who works here is pretty good.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, she's
She's
just
absolutely
mastered.
amazing.
Now she's just mastered digital iPad art. The friend of mine who does the cards that are outside with the book quotes on, which are lovely. I put them in touch with each other, and Deb said, well, I'll lend Holly my iPad so she can play around with what she's done, scan them in, email them in and all that. And Holly took it home. I don't know what program she's used, but she's done 12 images of that quality within a week.
Wow.
Now by hand, she couldn't have done that, but on the digital medium, there's like a sketch pen that scratches onto the surface of the iPad, and they've just gone off to the printers for the cards. The cards will be out in about a month or so. But you know, if you've got someone who needs illustration to go with something for young children, make sure you come in and speak to Holly on a Saturday morning, because she's got a little bit of, you know, diamond. She did the cover. We've run out. Yeah, she did the cover for the Thornbury Writers anthology. Has Elizabeth got one? Yeah. Well, there's one there. Ian's got one. But there's 12 stories in there, and each of them is very different. And she read them all, sat down, did some sketches, put them all together, and within a week or two, it was quite quick, wasn't it? 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, she'd produced a genuinely good book cover, and she's 19, so she's going to be someone to stay friendly with. But I think the main thing is, and hopefully people are you know, willing to come back and talk to Debbie in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. We'll make sure in a minute we get pen and paper, and obviously we can mingle. There's no problem with us being here for a while longer. There's no timeline on this. But if everyone gives Debbie a phone number, a mobile phone number, or an email address, and their name, and maybe just a bullet point of what they are writing or how, then her and Nigel will get in touch with you, and then we'll get a date as soon as we can off Debbie, because she's on this silly wind down of work, real work, the daytime strain. It's not good for you. So in about 3 or 4 weeks or so, we'll have a Sunday afternoon. Debbie will come and sit here for the whole afternoon, and then we can pipe you all in, you know, for 15 or 20 minutes at a time as individuals. So whatever you've done, you know, novel or poetry or sci-fi or music book, that you can sit with Debbie and spend, you know, 20 minutes or so showing her what you've done. She can appraise it. Yeah. No, you mainly are weird and wonderful.
Debbie, I thought
it. More than so.
Is there a difference, like, you find in the, like, editing for your American authors versus your English authors? Because me, I'm married to an Englishman, and I've done, like, editing for some of his, he's a computer science dude at John Moore's, and so, like, he writes these technical papers I know nothing about.
Down to, obviously the US is generally the Chicago Manual of Style.
Yeah, or APA, well, APA was what we were talking anyway,
It's, most of the stuff in fiction tends to be with CMOS, and it's differences in punctuation, obviously the difference in spelling, but the one that I've just had with Rick, actually, the book I'm reading at the moment for him, and I can't figure out the difference. Why do Americans, depending on where they come from, use couple of sometimes and couple without of in other times? So a couple of months, but a couple glasses of wine. And I can't figure out the rule. He can't explain the rule to me, so we're a bit of an impasse, really.
Well, it's just a regional thing, kind of like, you know, you have like, well, even regional things here in England or in Scotland. America's so big, and I'm a nurse too, so I did like travel nursing around, and I mean, they just say totally different things. Like down south where I'm from, we'll say Coke, and that's like a generic term for anything, for Pepsi or for whatever. And up north they'll say soda in the Midwest, and they'll in the Midwest they say pop. Like in New York they'll say soda, and it's just, you know, but you have to think of America as being such a big place.
Well, I mean, that's the same, I think, with the UK, isn't it? To some
extent.
And there's, I've noticed that there's a huge difference between writers, authors from the north and south, where writers from the south would never write, I will see you in a bit. I'll see you in a while, or I'll see you later.
Liverpool sounds and something like that.
See you in a bit. Or Manchester or Burstow, see you in a bit. Where were you a bit in? But it is, there's huge differences. But I mean, the thing I will go with is whatever's right for the author. So
right.
Elle, because she worked as a photojournalist in the UK. She used the most bizarre hybrid of US and UK English. It was really
I probably do now too, yeah.
And also, who was the other one who did that? That's just gone out of my head now. I can't remember. Somebody else did the same kind of thing where they were mixing. Oh, the Canadian author I'm working with, because Canadian English is a
even
mix
different,
of US
yeah.
and UK. So she will
and I'm
spell
sure Australian and like
behaviour
New
with only
Zealand
you
as
are,
well.
but she uses Z in real lines, you know, and so. I mean, I'm learning.
I
all the
use
time,
that
but
in real life, yeah.
Well, I just go with whatever's right for the author. At the end of the day, if they want to use the American style punctuation, at least have the wrong punctuation, because that's what I've been spending the last 2 weeks. One of the books I've just written, the story I've just written for an anthology, is it's about an Englishman who lives in Boston, and as the book progresses, he returns to being English, and he moves back to the UK, but I've tried to make it that he starts off talking very American, and it becomes more English, which the editors are going mad, and so you can see all the proofreaders and stuff are saying, shouldn't that say this? And the editor's saying no, because it's this far into the book, so it should now be English, UK English rather than US English. But it's Yeah, if an author wants to use US English, I'm absolutely fine with that. As long as I know what I'm working with, I can do it. And if I don't know what I'm doing, there's lots of people who are around so wealth of information on the internet to figure it out.
Well, I've found, like I've lived here 17 years now, if I'm fully awake, I can remember the English way to say things and do things, but if I'm tired, I go on autopilot. So I'll sit on the right-hand side of the car, like, you know, to drive and things like that, you know.
Please stop the wheel.
And it's the garbage or the trash can. Yeah. And then, you know, my husband used to, well, we don't have a car anymore, but he'd say, well, Susie, are you going to drive? You know, and I was like, oh.
Or were you gonna? No, I was just gonna make the comment that on both sides of the pond, the words like and you know crop up in so many sentences that have absolutely no meaning in either language. Bill, were you gonna?
Mid to late, do you think? Deb, was it?
Yes.
I mean, to be fair, the other good thing is recently both of the local newspapers are genuinely putting in, partly for our benefit, but also for other local concerns. There's a lot more stuff going in, which is brilliant, because that was one of the problems we were having. We were doing things like this and no one was getting to know about it. But, I mean, Deb hasn't seen it because she lives nearer to Ormskirk than Formby Southport, but some of you will know there was a really decent feature in the papers about tonight, which has got people's attention. And that's what people need. They need to be prodded and reminded. Then the people that are interested will pool together and these things will keep happening. But when you're putting a lot of effort in to do something like this, there's hours go on behind the scenes, and then you've got 3 people turning up and you're thinking, surely there's more than 3 people who want to meet someone who's done a lovely picture book or you know, a poetry collection or a novel or whatever. You know, so if the media are behind culture, then the public can join in with the bits of culture that are important to them. Heaven forbid we had a famous footballer here tonight. You lot wouldn't have got in because there'd have been like 6,000 red or blue shirted whatevers, wouldn't there? You know, but there's plenty. Well, apart from QPR, because both fans are here. There was another. I heard mention of it from someone. Someone else mentioned QPR, didn't they?
An author, wasn't it? One of the authors.
No, there was that.
There was a second author, yeah.
A virtual QPR fan.
Yeah.
There's one real fan and one virtual fan. Mud Southport got what I go and watch now and again, though.
Actually, we've got 3 authors who are QPR fans.
Yeah.
One of them's still unpublished, though.
Including John.
Well, I think we'll sort of, you know, rise to applause, clapping and all that.